Morning. Okay, the title of my talk today is What's in a Name? So, when you think of identity, what do you think of? For me, I think of a name. What is the significance of a name? Well, a name is a word that someone is called, and every name has a meaning. We're all given names from our parents, one that our parents feel captures who we are. However, this name doesn't necessarily reflect the fullness of God's plan for us. What do I mean by this? Well, here are a couple of examples. Okay, the first example I have is Simon, whose name was changed to Peter. Now, his parents gave him the name Simon, one heard or to be heard. But Jesus changed his name to Peter, which means rock or stone. Now, we can see this in John chapter 1, verse 41 to 42. The first thing Andrew did was to find his brother Simon and tell him, "We have found the Messiah, that is the Christ." And he brought him to Jesus. Jesus looked at him and said, "You are Simon, son of John, but you will be called Cephas," which when translated is Peter. Imagine you are Simon here. Your brother tells you, "We found the Messiah," and takes you to Jesus. The first thing Jesus says to you is, "You're Simon, but you'll be called Peter." Now this shows me that Jesus had a plan for Simon the moment he met him. And the definition of Peter, meaning rock or stone, had to have had some significance in Jesus' plan for him. This plan is shown in Matthew chapter 16, verse 17 to 18. Jesus replied, "Blessed are you, Simon son of Jonah, for this was not revealed to you by man, but by my Father in heaven. And I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it." In this passage, Jesus actually uses the definition of Peter. He says, "You are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church." What do you think of when you think of a rock? You think of something that's strong and enduring. What better foundation to build your church on? Jesus changed Simon's name to Peter for this very reason. The name Peter was a daily reminder into fulfilling God's plan. Now the second example I have is Saul, whose name was changed to Paul. His parents gave him the name Saul, which means asked for, and his name was changed to Paul, which means little. Paul is different to Peter here, in that we don't know exactly who changed his name, whether it be God or Paul himself. The only evidence we see is in Acts chapter 13, verse 9, when Saul, who was also called Paul. So we don't know who changed his name. But why was his name changed? In Galatians chapter 1, verse 15 to 17, it says, "But when God, who set me apart from birth and called me by his grace, was pleased to reveal his Son in me so that I may preach to him among the Gentiles, I did not consult any man, nor did I go up to Jerusalem to see those who were apostles before I was, but I went immediately to Arabia and later returned to Damascus." In this passage, Paul is called by the Lord to preach the Lord's word to the Gentiles. And who are the Gentiles? Well, Gentiles are defined as non-Jewish people, but the thing is, Saul was a Jewish name. Paul, on the other hand, was a Roman name. And in order for Saul to effectively preach to the Gentiles, a more common and familiar name was chosen, Paul. The name Paul means small. So what did this have to do with God's plan? We can see this in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 19. "Though I am free to belong to no man, I make myself a slave to everyone to win as many as possible." This shows how Paul made himself small in status in order to relate to as many people as possible. These two examples, Paul and Peter, they both show how their names were changed to better suit God's plan for each of them. So what does this all have to do with identity? Well, we all have a human name, a name given to us at birth. God knows us not only by this name, but also by who we are inside and who we are able to be. It is this name or identity that God has for us that best reflects our role in God's divine plan. Thank you.
Identity is defined as an individual's characteristics by which a thing or person is recognized or known. Even after we became Christians and made Jesus the main aspect of our lives, we struggle with sin like everyone else in the world, and that makes it hard for us to discover who we really are and what God's plan for us is in the future. This sin blinds us from our true identities and the kind of people Jesus wants us to be. To discover our true identities and who we are as people, we must do two things. Flee irresponsibility, meaning fleeing from the sin that is part of our lives that's not bringing us closer to God or setting us up to fail. It's important that we don't put ourselves in these situations from the beginning. Also, thinking spiritually and living biblically are finding where God lies in your heart. You have to make sure your heart is fixed on Jesus and your mind is centered and based around God's Word. Even through mistakes we've made along the way, you just have to choose the right path and continue to stick on it. That God has God as the foundation, because through choosing God, it can create a positive environment for everyone, and others can see what you do and you can lead by example. I'd like to share with you a story. Can anyone tell me what this is?
$20.
Yeah. Can I get a volunteer, please? Oh, this for me. Matt? Now what's this? Yeah? Alright. Who wants this one? Okay. Well, what about this? Do you still want it? Yeah? Alright. Should I come and hold it for me, please? Well, we've just learned a valuable lesson. Some of us are like this $20 note. Grown up in a loving family, gone to a good school and have good grades, lots of friends, invited out to parties and events, have a blessed life, great job, going on holidays, and having a lovely home. On the other hand, some of us may come from homes or know people in our lives that may be like this $20 note. They come from a broken home, gone to school, not many good things happen, failing exams, not good at sport or music. Parents and friends drink, smoke and swear, have many few friends, and teased by some. They have limited money, wear clothes that have holes in them, and rarely have the money to go shopping. Guess what? Both this money represents us. No matter what I did to the money, some of you still wanted it because it didn't decrease in value. It's still $20. The worth of our lives doesn't come from what we do or who we are, but our identity of who we are. God made us perfect, and we are all uniquely special. Don't ever forget it. So remember to count your blessings and not your problems.